Officer Daniel Cross was certain. Just another black woman driving a car too expensive for her, with an attitude too confident for his liking. He twisted her arms behind her back, slammed her face against the hood, never realizing he wasn't humiliating just another driver. He was arresting the state's attorney general, a woman who decided the fate of cops like him. By the time the truth came out, it was too late. The cameras had captured everything, the public demanded justice, and his career crumbled like a house of cards. But what Olivia Harris did next shocked even the most hardened skeptics. Let's start from the beginning. The heat in Atlanta was unbearable. The asphalt melted under the scorching sun, creating mirages in the air, and the heavy humidity made every breath feel suffocating. Even the car's air conditioning struggled against the stifling heat. Olivia Harris, a 55-year-old black woman with a neatly cropped haircut, drove calmly down the busy highway in her elegant navy blue Dior suit. Her face remained composed, but her eyes were focused. She had just left an important meeting at City Hall, where crucial police reform discussions had taken place. It had been an especially tense day. Her proposals to tighten control over police conduct had sparked fierce debates. Many within the system were unhappy, especially after a recent scandal involving excessive force. Her efforts could change the game, but that also meant she was making enemies, particularly among the officers. She glanced at her phone screen, mounted on the dashboard. A new message from the mayor popped up. "Great job. Hope you can handle the pressure. It won't be easy." Olivia smirked slightly, as if she didn't already know that. At that moment, a sharp wail of sirens made her heart clench. In the rearview mirror, she spotted a police Ford Explorer with flashing red and blue lights. Damn. She hadn't broken any laws. Speeding? No, she was moving with traffic. A traffic light? Everything was by the book, but the rules were often different for people like her. She pressed the brake and carefully pulled over to the side, turning on her hazard lights. A few seconds later, the patrol car's door shut with a heavy thud, and Officer Daniel Cross began approaching her vehicle. Daniel Cross, a 40-year-old white man with broad shoulders, short blonde hair, and cold gray eyes, walked toward the car. The badge on his chest gleamed in the sun, and his right hand rested on his holstered gun. He always did that when stopping someone he deemed suspicious. He didn't like seeing black people driving expensive cars. He had seen it 1,000 times. Criminals, drug dealers, pimps, they all loved flashy rides. And now, in front of him, sat a black woman behind the wheel of a Mercedes-Benz S-Class. Her hands were on the steering wheel, her gaze steady, confident, too confident. She wasn't afraid, unlike most. That pissed him off. He stepped up to the window without even greeting her. "You were speeding. License and registration." His voice was sharp, cold. Olivia looked at him, her expression unchanged. "Good afternoon, officer. Could you tell me how many miles per hour I was over the limit?" Cross scowled. He didn't like being questioned. "License and registration, ma'am. Now." She didn't argue. Moving smoothly, she reached for her purse on the passenger seat, slowly pulling out her wallet. Every movement Olivia made was deliberate. She knew that any sudden action could give Cross an excuse for more aggressive measures. She handed over her driver's license and registration. Cross snatched them from her hands without looking at her, but within seconds, his expression changed. His face tensed. "Olivia Harris?" He studied her more carefully now. The woman nodded. "This car is registered to you?" His tone hardened, almost accusatory. "Yes, and you can clearly see that." Olivia knew what was coming next. Cross stood there for a few seconds, as if weighing the situation. Then, without another word, he turned sharply and walked back to his patrol car. She exhaled slowly. She knew this playbook by heart. Meanwhile, Cross's partner, Officer Rick Blake, A tall, athletic white man in his mid-30s walked up. He had just finished writing a ticket for another driver and didn't understand why Cross was still dealing with the black woman in the Mercedes. "Something wrong?" he asked. Cross smirked, gesturing toward Olivia's car with his thumb. "Black woman driving a $100,000 car? Seriously? She says it's hers." Blake frowned. "Are you kidding me? Let's just run a quick check and move on. If everything's clean, we let her go." Cross chuckled. "You really think she can afford that? They buy these with drug money or from guys they service. I'm running her through the system. Something about her seems off." Blake sighed. "Man, can't we just give her a ticket and go? Her paperwork's in order." But Cross had already made up his mind. "No, I'm doing this by the book. Let's see how she reacts when I tell her to step out of the car." Cops often tested people's patience, especially black people, and if they resisted, things only got worse. Olivia sat in her car, watching them in the rearview mirror. She couldn't hear their conversation, but she already knew what was coming. She had seen this scenario play out countless times, and this time would be no different. Except they had no idea who she was. Inside her car, Olivia sat calmly, but a familiar sense of anxiety was building within her. She had seen too many situations like this before. She had seen unjustified stops turn into arrests, and arrests escalate into brutal confrontations. Through the side mirror, she noticed Cross returning. This time, his face looked even harsher. There was something personal in his eyes. He stopped at her window and, without even glancing at her documents, barked, "Step out of the car." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "On what grounds, officer?" "Don't ask questions, ma'am. I said step out of the car." She took a deep breath. "I respect the law, officer, but you need a valid reason for a stop or a search." Cross suddenly grabbed the handle of his gun, not drawing it, but making a point. "This isn't a request, ma'am." Olivia slowly unbuckled her seatbelt, carefully controlling her every movement. She opened the door and stepped out, raising her hands slightly in a non-threatening gesture, though her gaze remained steady and unwavering. "Turn around and place your hands on the hood." "Am I under arrest?" "You're acting suspiciously." Olivia didn't move. "I'm a lawyer by training, officer, and I know that nothing I've done is suspicious." Cross stepped closer. "Are you trying to argue with me? I'm asking you to explain why I should comply with an unlawful order." That was the moment Cross lost his patience. He grabbed her arm roughly and twisted it behind her back. "What are you doing?" she shouted, a sharp jolt of pain shooting through her shoulder. "Shut up and don't resist." Olivia wasn't resisting, but Cross twisted her arm even harder and shoved her forcefully onto the hood of her own car. Passers-by started to slow down. "Hey, what's he doing?" a voice called out. On the sidewalk, people pulled out their phones and began recording. The cameras were already rolling. "She didn't do anything," a young black man in a t-shirt shouted. "Did you even check her documents?" an older man asked. But Cross wasn't listening. He clamped the handcuffs onto Olivia's wrists with a harsh snap. "You're under arrest." "On what charges?" Olivia's voice remained firm. "Suspicion of vehicle theft." "This is my car. You saw the registration." But Cross only tightened the cuffs, making her gasp in pain. Officer Blake stood nearby, watching the scene unfold. He clearly didn't approve of Cross's actions, but he did nothing. "Daniel, are you sure about this?" "Oh, cut it out, Rick. She's just another smartass who thinks she can talk her way out of this. Let her sit in a cell for a few hours." The crowd was growing. A woman in a business suit recorded the scene, her voice filled with outrage. "They're arresting an innocent black woman for no reason. This is happening right in front of us." The officers could feel the shift. Blake stepped closer to Cross and muttered under his breath, "This is a bad idea. What if she's someone important?" But Cross wasn't stopping. He shoved Olivia into the back of the police SUV. Her expensive suit crumpled, and her purse fell onto the pavement. She lifted her head, locking eyes with the dozens of phones capturing her humiliation. One man was already streaming live. "This needs to be on the news." Blake looked at Cross, his face turning deathly pale. He knew they had just made a huge mistake, but Cross didn't see it. He started the engine and drove Olivia away. The crowd remained behind, but the internet had already seen everything, and soon the whole world would know. The police SUV was stuffy, but Olivia could feel the cold metal of the handcuffs biting into her wrists. Her hands were numb, and her shoulders ached from Cross's rough handling. She sat silently, staring straight ahead. Cross didn't look at her, but in the rearview mirror, he could see her reflection. This woman wasn't crying, begging, or trying to explain herself. She didn't look broken. That irritated him. "So how does it feel to be in cuffs?" he sneered. Olivia remained silent. Blake, sitting beside him, looked uneasy. "Daniel, maybe we should just check her records and make sure everything's in order?" Cross scoffed. "Relax, Rick. She's just another high and mighty type who thought the rules didn't apply to her. She'll learn real quick at the station." Blake didn't respond, but a bad feeling was growing in his gut. When they arrived at the precinct, Cross yanked Olivia out of the car, gripping her elbow roughly. People outside, civilians and officers alike, paused, watching as an elegant black woman in an expensive suit was led inside in handcuffs. At the front desk, Officer Luis Mendoza, a Latino officer, frowned when he saw her. "What do we have here?" "Car theft," Cross said flatly. Luis glanced at Cross, then at Olivia. "You sure about that?" Cross let out an annoyed sigh. "Just book her, Luis." Luis hesitated, then took the paperwork. But before he could process it, the precinct doors burst open. Captain Marcus Wells stormed inside. A tall black man in his 50s, with closely cropped hair and piercing eyes, he moved like a force of nature. His face was pale, his breathing sharp. The entire room fell silent. "You just arrested the Attorney General?" The captain stopped in front of Cross and Blake, his eyes burning with fury. "Where is she?" Cross hesitated. "Who are you looking for, Captain?" Marcus's gaze slowly shifted toward Olivia, who stood calmly in cuffs, unshaken. Then he turned sharply to Luis. "Get those cuffs off her, now." Luis obeyed instantly. Olivia rubbed her wrists, watching as Cross started to realize what had just happened. Marcus's voice dropped into a deadly whisper. "You just arrested the Attorney General of Georgia." The silence in the precinct became suffocating. Cross snapped his head toward Olivia. "What?" "Olivia Harris, Attorney General of this state. Your boss." Cross went pale. He stared at her, but she remained still, her expression unreadable. No fear, no anger, just quiet authority. "Release her, and all of you, my office. Now," Marcus ordered, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. Cross felt his entire world collapsing. Blake took a slow step back, realizing he had just witnessed the biggest disaster of his partner's career. Marcus turned to Olivia. "Ma'am, I'm sorry." Olivia looked at him steadily. "We'll talk later, Captain." She walked out of the station in silent dignity, leaving Cross standing there, feeling the weight of every officer's eyes on him, and he knew. His career was over. Olivia walked out of the police station with her head held high. Outside, a small crowd had gathered, phones raised, capturing her every step. She didn't shy away from the cameras. On the contrary, she stopped in front of a reporter from a local news channel who was already lifting his microphone. "Ms. Harris, what happened? Were you just arrested? Is it true?" Olivia looked straight into the camera. "It's true. I was arrested without any legal justification, simply because a police officer decided that a black woman couldn't possibly be driving an expensive car. The journalists buzzed, jotting down every word. "What action will you take?" "I will do exactly what I promised the people. I will change the system. And this incident will be the beginning." With that, she turned and walked toward the black SUV waiting for her at the curb. A cop under pressure. Meanwhile, inside the precinct, Cross paced the hallway, fists clenched. "This is a damn nightmare. No, Daniel, this is your end," Blake muttered from his seat, rubbing his temples. Cross turned on him angrily. "You really think she's going to ruin everything? That she's that powerful?" Blake scoffed. "Do you even understand how much power the Attorney General has? She could end our careers before lunch." At that moment, Captain Marcus Wells stepped into the office, a folder in hand. His gaze was ice cold. "Daniel Cross, you're suspended pending an official investigation." "What?" "Footage of your unlawful arrest has already gone viral. Every news channel is running it. City officials are demanding your termination." Cross gritted his teeth. "She's just using this against us. She wants to show she can crush anyone." Marcus took a step closer. "No, Cross. She wants to show that the law should apply to everyone, even you." The next day, news headlines exploded. Police officer arrests Attorney General without cause. Now he's facing consequences. Olivia Harris announces sweeping police reform. The system will no longer protect racists. Olivia held a press conference where she announced a new legislative proposal. "This isn't about me. This is about the thousands of people who are unjustly arrested every day. But they don't have cameras. They don't have power to protect themselves. That's why I will make sure this never happens again." Cross watched the broadcast from his home, where he was now just another disgraced cop with no future. He wanted to fight back, to prove something, but deep down he knew it was over. His career was destroyed, and Olivia Harris had become a symbol of justice.